After Germany's defeat in the First World War, the future of German tank development was formally predetermined. The Treaty of Versailles categorically prohibited the development and production of armored vehicles of any kind. However, such restrictions, as has often happened in the history of military technology, did not halt the process, but merely concealed it from observers. As early as the first half of the 1920s, the Reichswehr leadership began seeking ways to circumvent the prohibitions. Officers responsible for motorizing the troops fully understood that the future of warfare belonged to mechanized formations and that an army deprived of armored vehicles was doomed to fall behind. In the absence of real tanks, the Germans had to make do with training vehicles fitted with wooden and plywood frames that simulated the silhouette of an armored fighting vehicle. These improvised designs allowed crews to practice interaction, unit maneuvering, the basics of communications and command, but they could not substitute for genuine technical testing. The situation changed when Germany entered into secret military cooperation with the Soviet Union. At a remote proving ground near Kazan, German officers gained the opportunity to work with experimental armored vehicles and test new ideas beyond the oversight of international commissions. It was there that serious thought began on what the future tank should look like, what tasks it would perform, and in which direction the industry should evolve. These studies laid the foundation for the radical renewal of military thinking that unfolded in Germany toward the end of the 1920s, and especially in the early 1930s. It was during this period that a new school of operational thought took shape in the Reichswehr, associated with the names of Lutz, Guderian, Beck, and other officers who would later define the direction of the German war machine. Their concepts of mobile warfare demanded a different army structure: fast, self-propelled, well-protected formations capable of delivering strikes against key nodes of the enemy defense and exploiting success in depth. Tanks were no longer regarded as auxiliary forces, but as the primary instrument of operational breakthrough. At the same time, however, it was understood that different tasks required different types of vehicles. The combat experience of the First World War still influenced command thinking, compelling a search for balance between infantry support assets and anti-armor capabilities. This gave rise to the idea of dividing tanks into two classes, each with its own function. Tanks armed with low-caliber guns were intended for combat against armored vehicles, while those with high-caliber guns were to suppress fortifications and infantry. Within this framework, the future Panzerkampfwagen IV occupied the role of an artillery tank, a mobile fire support vehicle that followed behind the line of attack. Fitting a short-barreled 75mm gun was a logical consequence of these requirements. The heavy high-explosive shell ensured the destruction of field fortifications, while anti-tank combat was not part of the vehicle's mission profile. Several companies competed for the contract to develop the new tank, reflecting the ambitions of German industry to regain its status as one of the world's leading centers of military technology. Foreign designs, French, British, and Soviet, were carefully studied alongside Germany's own experience from the First World War. Designers knew Germany lagged technically, but deliberately built future upgrade potential into the project. The 1934-1935 competitions eliminated solutions that were overly complex to manufacture or lacked further development prospects. The Krupp design stood out for its pragmatism. The vehicle featured a simple, production-friendly hull with vertical armor plates, a spacious turret, and a reliable running gear based on a layout very similar to that of the Panzer III. Unification of the two vehicles was regarded as a critical factor. Germany could not yet afford an overly diverse inventory. Engineers sought to create a design that could be mass-produced and maintained in the field without factory specialists. When trials of the early prototypes began, it became clear that the new tank surpassed many foreign contemporaries in ease of maintenance. Particular praise was given to the commander's working environment. The turret was roomy enough to allow him to perform multiple tasks while retaining good all-round vision. From the outset, the German school of tank design emphasized the commander's role as the central element of vehicle control. Radio communication, observation, and rapid decision-making all demanded ample space and comfort. Features often lacking in foreign tanks of the 1930s, especially French ones. It was precisely the human factor that was considered the primary source of combat effectiveness. Despite the successful design, series production of the Panzer IV progressed slowly. German industry was overburdened with other programs: aircraft, artillery, and trucks for army motorization. For several years, output remained limited, intended only to equip individual companies within tank battalions. The tank was still viewed as an auxiliary asset, although on proving grounds, commanders repeatedly noted its high reliability and readiness for varied conditions. This caution stemmed less from doubts about the design itself than from a broader strategy of resource allocation. Germany was not yet ready for full-scale conflict and placed its bets on gradual development of its military capability. By the time of the attack on Poland, the Panzer IV existed in limited numbers and was employed primarily as a fire support vehicle. Its appearance on the battlefield rarely decided the overall outcome of an engagement, but crews valued the power of its high-explosive shell, which enabled rapid suppression of fortified positions, bridges, and buildings converted into strongpoints. The Polish army fielded comparatively weak armor, and Panzer IV units seldom encountered serious threats. Nevertheless, the campaign revealed a key insight. Even a modest number of these vehicles significantly increased the striking power of German armored units, thanks to the versatility of their gun and high reliability. By 1940, on the eve of the French campaign, German command still regarded the Panzer III as the primary tank capable of full-scale mobile combat. Yet fighting in France shook that conviction for the first time. Encounters with heavy French vehicles, above all the B-1 bis, demonstrated that the Panzer IV's short-barreled gun was too weak to penetrate well-armored targets effectively. Panzer divisions were forced to bypass dangerous sectors, calling in air support or anti-tank artillery to deal with such opponents. Despite tactical successes built on superior command and maneuver, German leadership recognized that the technical potential of support tanks would sooner or later fail to meet frontline demands. Definitive conclusions, however, had not yet been drawn. In spring 1940, reports the Panzer IV was still characterized as auxiliary, and upgrades focused mainly on thicker armor and better crew protection rather than increased firepower. Only after confronting Soviet armor in the summer of 1941 did the inherent potential built into the Panzer IV from the beginning become apparent. The ability to dramatically improve combat effectiveness without a complete hull redesign. This feature, which had seemed secondary in the 1930s, suddenly became the key to future re-equipment of German tank forces. Following the launch of Operation Barbarossa in the summer of 1941, German forces encountered something they could not have foreseen. Rapid advances across Soviet territory exposed the enormous scale of the Red Army's industrial potential and the technological superiority of certain vehicles, which differed radically from anything German crews had previously seen. The Panzer IV, originally designed as an infantry support vehicle with the short-barreled 75mm Kpfw.IV, found itself in a unique position. Its construction permitted upgrades and the installation of a more powerful gun, something that soon became vitally necessary. Initial clashes with heavy KV-1s and medium T-34s shocked Panzer III crews and those of early Panzer IVs. The KV-1 was virtually invulnerable to the 37mm and 50mm shells of the Panzer III, while the T-34, with its sloped armor, diesel engine, and wide tracks, displayed unexpected mobility on any terrain. German tankers quickly realized that standard blitzkrieg tactics and direct fire pressure required urgent revision. The real problem was that previously safe engagement ranges had become deadly. The T-34 could hit Panzer IIIs and early Panzer IVs at distances Germans had considered beyond reach, forcing flank maneuvers and reliance on artillery, air support, and 88mm flak guns. The Panzer IV proved to be the only tank capable of meaningful upgrade without complete redesign. In early 1942, its chassis received the long-barreled Kpfw.IV. The new Ausf Nef2 version could confidently engage T-34s at medium range, and in 1943, the Ausf-G with the L-48 further increased penetration. German engineers also thickened frontal armor to 80mm, added side skirts, Schürzen, to protect against anti-tank rifles and shape-charge projectiles, and improved the running gear, though this increased strain on the transmission and reduced maintainability. Despite these drawbacks, the Panzer IV remained the Wehrmacht's most numerous and reliable medium tank, able to absorb damage and stay combat effective even under the extreme conditions of the Eastern Front. The summer battles of 1943, culminating in the Battle of Kursk, demonstrated the limits of German armored technology. Soviet defenses were deeply echeloned. Multi-layer minefields, fortified trenches, anti-tank guns, and artillery created a deadly environment for advancing German tanks. The Panzer IV, supported by infantry and artillery, led the assault waves and met massive resistance. Losses of crews and vehicles were colossal. German records show that in some units, the number of killed and wounded tankers exceeded the original crew complement. Tanks returning to positions at night after combat often no longer had their original crews. New men, sometimes mere teenagers, took the places of the fallen, frequently with little or no training, simply to continue the fight. Crews noted that on the battlefield, the Panzer IV combined artillery support capabilities with the functions of a medium tank. Flank attacks, destruction of anti-tank guns, fire against T-34s and KV-1s, and infantry cover. Tactics demanded precise range estimation, instantaneous decisions, and coordination with other arms. German panzer divisions integrated artillery, air support, and infantry into cohesive combat groups, able to operate independently, yet in concert. Under intense enemy fire, the Panzer IV proved remarkably resilient. Damaged vehicles often kept moving, and experienced crews performed field repairs on the front line. Despite upgrades, the vehicle faced a growing threat from the Soviet Army, which ramped up T-34 production, improved armor, increased gun power, introduced new self-propelled guns such as the Su-152, and refined tactics. The Panzer IV remained the core of German panzer divisions, but its effectiveness now depended heavily on crew skill and timely support from artillery and air power. Even a minor mistake could cost the tank and its crew their lives. Particular attention was paid to logistics. Tanks received spare parts, ammunition, and fuel, critically important under intensive use. German repair battalions worked around the clock, restoring vehicles after combat and enabling their repeated employment despite destructive conditions. Yet constant pressure on crews, high loss rates, and the need to rotate inexperienced new commanders created psychological strain that directly affected combat capability. The 1943 fighting showed that the Panzer IV, originally an infantry support vehicle, had become the Wehrmacht's principal medium tank, versatile and adaptable. It served on the Eastern Front, in North Africa and elsewhere, withstood extreme stresses, and continued to be upgraded despite mounting enemy threats. By mid-1943, the Panzer IV displayed a unique combination of versatility, maintainability, and reliability, remaining a cornerstone of German armored strength at a time when strategic advantage was gradually shifting to the Red Army. After the Battle of Kursk in the summer of 1943, the strategic situation on the Eastern Front changed fundamentally. Despite upgrades and enhanced armament, the Panzer IV now operated in conditions where Red Army numerical superiority, combined with growing technical maturity of Soviet tanks and self-propelled artillery, German units faced new threats: 57mm and 76mm anti-tank rifles, powerful field guns, heavy Su-152s and ISU-122s, and improved T-34s with thicker armor and the F-34 gun. German industry could no longer make good massive frontline losses, and the Panzer IV, still the most numerous medium tank, became a true workhorse in a war of attrition. Infantry and artillery support became critically important, for even the most experienced crews acting alone often met disaster. In the field, tankers observed that effective combat required grouping vehicles in teams of 3 to 5 to cover anti-tank gun sectors and provide mutual flank protection. During this period, German engineers continued modernizing the Panzer IV. The H and J models received frontal armor thickened to 80mm, side skirts, Schürzen, and improved optics and sighting systems. Ammunition types expanded to include new shaped charge and high-velocity armor-piercing rounds, increasing the chances of defeating T-34s at longer ranges. Yet the tank's increased weight of 25-27 tons created fresh problems. Running gear, transmission, and engine suffered overload, especially on broken terrain and in mud, snow, or minefields. German repair battalions tried to compensate by forming mobile workshops capable of restoring vehicles directly at the front, but the intensity of combat rendered the effort chronically inadequate. In the winter campaigns of 1943-1944, the Panzer IV remained the backbone of both offensive and defensive operations. Crews noted that the Maybach HL-120 engine was sufficiently reliable and permitted maneuver combat even in severe frost. However, electrical equipment, radios, and sighting mechanisms frequently failed. At the same time, the Panzer IV displayed astonishing resilience. A damaged tank could often keep moving, sometimes with a penetrated turret or part of the running gear disabled. Such maintainability and versatility preserved its value in German divisions despite the arrival of new heavy tanks, Tiger and Panther, which, though impressive on paper, were extremely expensive, required complex maintenance, and suffered frequent breakdowns in early production batches. In spring and summer 1944, the Panzer IV took part in defensive fighting on all fronts against massive Soviet assaults. The sheer number of T-34s overwhelmed German industry's ability to replace losses, while new self-propelled guns and artillery intensified pressure. Panzer divisions were forced to employ the Panzer IV in roles for which it had never been intended: holding lines, containing enemy mass advances, covering withdrawals and evacuations, and supporting infantry during river crossings and movement over difficult terrain. German tactics gradually shifted from offensive operations to reactive defense, in which every Panzer IV simultaneously functioned as a medium tank and mobile artillery platform. By mid-1944, newer Panzer IV models were being integrated with improved command vehicles and communication systems. Radios, optics, and coordination enabled the formation of maneuver combat groups, but effectiveness increasingly depended on crew experience. Young, poorly trained replacements for fallen veterans faced critical difficulties. The Panzer IV remained a relatively simple design, but demanded skilled handling and coordination when fighting a numerically and technically superior enemy. At the same time, German industry struggled to offset losses and meet new frontline demands. The Panzer IV was manufactured in large numbers until the war's end. The H and J versions received improved cooling systems, reinforced suspensions, and additional applique armor plates that offered partial resistance to newer Soviet projectiles. Under conditions of resource exhaustion and constant frontline pressure, the Panzer IV became the most balanced solution for the German army. Its combination of firepower, protection, maintainability, and mass production made it the key element of all operations. Between 1944 and 1945, the Panzer IV served on every front: Eastern, Western, Italian, and Balkan. Despite the appearance of new German heavy and medium tanks, it remained the backbone of most panzer units. It fought in the defense of the Dnieper, in the battles for Budapest, in the Ardennes counteroffensive, Battle of the Bulge, and on the Silesian Axis. German reports recorded that even with significant damage and crew losses, the Panzer IV could remain operational, perform covering missions, and strike enemy tanks and artillery positions. The vehicle demonstrated remarkable adaptability to diverse conditions, from the Ukrainian steppes and Belarusian swamps to the mountainous terrain of Italy. Its use in the final defensive battles on German soil was especially dramatic. Front lines contracted, resources dwindled, and fuel and ammunition became catastrophically scarce. Tanks often went into action with incomplete crews and minimal reserves of shells and fuel. Nevertheless, the Panzer IV remained the primary medium tank, serving as a living barrier against the advance of the Red Army and the Western Allies. It fought in street battles, river crossings, and against massed self-propelled and tank assaults, displaying structural reliability, adaptability, and longevity that allowed it to retain combat value even in the war's closing stages. The Panzer IV became a symbol of German armored doctrine, a vehicle originally created for infantry support that evolved into the principal medium tank, saw every major campaign, endured incredible stresses, participated in large-scale offensive and defensive operations, and remained in mass production until the end. It combined a relatively simple design with upgrade potential, high field maintainability with dependable engine and running gear, combat versatility with mass production, qualities that made it the cornerstone of German armor until the conclusion of the Second World War. After 1944, the Panzer IV continued as the central combat vehicle of the German army, despite growing enemy superiority in numbers and technology. Under conditions of total resource depletion, production of heavier and more advanced designs, such as the Panther and Tiger, could not meet frontline needs, and the Panzer IV became the universal platform for the widest variety of tasks, from containing Soviet offensives to urban combat and anti-tank operations on the Western Front. Despite armament and armor that had become outdated compared with newer Soviet models, the tank retained relatively high reliability, quick component replacement, and repair simplicity, making it indispensable in a shattered logistics system. German commanders noted that the Panzer IV continued to perform the critical role of a living armored wall, holding attacks long enough for heavy and newer tanks to reach the battlefield. A defining feature of the Panzer IV was its participation in large-scale defensive operations, especially on the Eastern Front. During the 1944 Soviet offensives in Belarus and Ukraine, tanks armed with the L-48 gun were used to cover infantry and armored groups, frequently engaging numerically and technically superior T-34s and IS-2s. Although the Panzer IV could not effectively counter the latest Soviet guns at long range, its mobility, survivability, and ability to return repeatedly to combat after repair preserved its strategic value. German tactics during this period shifted toward concentrated attacks by small groups and employment of the Panzer IV as a mobile fire asset for local breakthroughs and defense of key points. In summer and autumn 1944, the Panzer IV played an active role in the defense of Poland and East Prussia. Tanks were employed in dense urban environments where their relatively compact size and maneuverability gave advantages over heavier vehicles. Crews exploited short ranges and camouflage to create ambush positions, often in conjunction with anti-tank artillery and infantry. Losses, however, were catastrophic. A single hit from Soviet 85 122mm guns or artillery could destroy a Panzer IV. German documents record cases where, from a company of 20 to 25 tanks, fewer than a third survived a week, with crews replaced several times, resulting in personnel losses exceeding 100%, while material losses remained lower. On the Western Front, the Panzer IV also saw action after the Allied landings in Normandy. Tanks participated in defensive operations against British and American forces, including armored clashes with Shermans, Churchills, and Comets. Though outgunned by many Allied designs, the Panzer IV offered advantages in accuracy and frontal chasse side protection in close encounters, especially when combined with anti-tank rifles and mines. German commanders relied on camouflage, defense of narrow defiles, ambushes, and coordination of several vehicles to achieve local superiority. By late 1944, Panzer IV production lines could no longer fully replace losses, and fighting in the Ardennes and Silesia revealed the vehicle's limits. Systematic Allied and Soviet attacks destroyed tanks faster than they could be repaired or new ones delivered. Still, the Panzer IV remained the most numerous and relatively reliable tank, making it the linchpin of defensive operations despite obsolescent design and mounting mechanical problems from overloaded running gear and aging engines. In urban fighting inside Germany, the Panzer IV provided direct support to infantry and engineers, destroying fortifications and covering advances. Vehicles with both short and long-barreled guns created fire screens for infantry, suppressed machine gun and artillery positions, and protected against light enemy armor. On narrow streets and amid ruins, the tanks displayed high maneuverability, allowing their use not only as direct assault assets, but also as covering forces and mobile artillery. The Panzer IV also proved important logistically and psychologically. For German troops, the vehicle symbolized the ability to keep fighting despite growing enemy superiority. Even minimally trained crews could operate it with reasonable effectiveness, enabling the formation of combat groups, the holding of key sectors, and the delaying of enemy advances. Yet intense crew losses and frequent mechanical damage made combat extremely hazardous. Young replacements for the fallen often suffered shock in their first engagements and faced very high mortality. In the war's final phases, the Panzer IV fought simultaneously on all fronts, including East Prussia, Silesia, Bavaria, and Czechoslovakia. Vehicles were used to hold lines, secure river crossings, and establish strong points in cities and suburbs. Despite outdated characteristics and armor deficiencies, the Panzer IV retained combat capability thanks to compact construction, rapid parts replacement, and operational simplicity, allowing crews to deliver local strikes, cover withdrawals, and achieve limited breakthroughs in enemy defenses. Thus, the Panzer IV remained a mass-produced and versatile tank that, originally conceived as an infantry support asset, gradually became the cornerstone of German armored operations. It saw virtually every major battle of the Second World War, from Poland and France to Kursk, East Prussia, and the defense of the Reich. Despite obsolescence, it formed the backbone of panzer units, providing the balance of firepower, mobility, maintainability, and mass production that defined its enduring role and reflected both the capabilities and limitations of the German war machine at every stage of the conflict. With the arrival of 1945, the Panzer IV continued to serve as a numerous and relatively reliable tank, even though the situation on all fronts had become catastrophic for Germany. On the Eastern Front, the German army was in retreat, losing positions, territory, and logistical hubs. Panzer IVs armed with the L-48 gun were used to cover withdrawals, support infantry, and attempt local counterattacks. Crews faced overwhelming Soviet forces, including heavy IS-2s and improved T-34-85s, whose armor and firepower far exceeded the standard Panzer IV's capabilities. Nevertheless, the tank continued to act as a living shield, enabling the creation of temporary fortified positions and delaying the enemy advance. On the Western Front, the Panzer IV participated in the defense of Germany against the advancing Allies. Tanks fought in city battles, defended bridges and key junctions, and attempted to halt mechanized columns. Under these conditions, vehicles often operated alongside infantry, anti-tank guns, and artillery to achieve local numerical superiority at short range. Employment of the Panzer IV in defensive operations demanded high concentration, coordination, and accurate fire from crews, for any mistake could lead to instant loss of vehicle and personnel. Systematic losses on the Eastern Front reached critical levels. German repair battalions noted that tanks frequently returned to the line after minimal repairs, despite damage to running gear, transmission, and armor. Crew replacement became routine. Young, poorly prepared tankers took the places of the dead and wounded, increasing mortality and reducing combat effectiveness. Despite everything, the Panzer IV remained one of the most numerous and recognizable symbols of German armored forces. Production continued almost until the end, though new modifications were rare and barely influenced battle outcomes. In defensive urban fighting in cities such as Berlin, Dresden, and Königsberg, the Panzer IV provided mobile fire support to infantry. Vehicles set ambushes in narrow streets, suppressed machine gun and artillery positions, and assisted engineer units in clearing mines and destroying fortifications. Despite its aged design and limited armor, the Panzer IV enabled crews to operate with relative effectiveness in confined spaces, making it extremely valuable even in the war's final phase. At the moment of Germany's capitulation, the Panzer IV remained the most numerous tank in the German arsenal, having taken part in virtually every major campaign on every front. Its history traces the path from an auxiliary infantry support tank to a universal combat vehicle that performed both offensive and defensive roles. Despite obsolescence and limitations in armament and armor, the Panzer IV remained a dependable instrument of the German army, demonstrating a balance of mass availability, maintainability, firepower, and mobility. After the end of the Second World War, captured Panzer IVs were used by several countries. In Syria, for example, they remained in combat service into the 1960s, fighting Israeli armor, including Shermans. In post-war Germany and Eastern Bloc nations, they served for training and instructional purposes, while individual examples ended up in museums and collections as monuments to the era. Thus, the Panzer IV left a significant legacy. It was neither the most powerful nor the most advanced tank of its time, yet it became the embodiment of the German armored vehicle, capable of adapting to changing conditions of war, withstanding intense combat, and remaining operationally viable in large numbers, even in the conflict's latest stages. The tank evolved from an auxiliary infantry support asset into a universal fighting vehicle that participated in every key operation, from the invasion of Poland to the final defense of Berlin, proving that a successful tank must combine reliability, maintainability, sufficient firepower, and mass production. By the end of the Second World War, the Panzer IV represented a fully realized example of how a tank originally designed for infantry support could transform into a universal combat vehicle capable of a wide range of battlefield tasks. Its designers had built-in upgrade and adaptation potential, and these qualities ensured its long service life. Each modification, from the short-barreled KWK-37L24 through the long-barreled KWK-40L43 and L48, reflected the tank's gradual evolution in response to frontline changes and emerging threats. With increased armor and gun power, the Panzer IV could not only confront newer Soviet medium and heavy tanks, but also retain sufficient mobility, a critical factor for maneuver warfare on the Eastern Front. The entire structure of German armored doctrine was built around the possibilities and limitations of the Panzer IV. It became the link between the obsolescent Panzer III and the powerful but scarce Tiger and Panther. Throughout the war, the Panzer IV served as the primary mass production platform, not only for direct combat, but as the basis for other vehicles. The more common assault gun Stu-Ge 3 was built on the Panzer III chassis, while the later Stu-Ge 4 used the Panzer IV chassis, along with self-propelled anti-tank guns and command vehicles, enhancing the effectiveness of panzer units under constrained resources. Mass production allowed rapid replacement of losses, while design simplicity permitted repairs even in field conditions. The tactical value of the Panzer IV manifested itself in countless operations, from the Blitzkrieg campaigns in Poland and France to the Battle of Kursk and the subsequent defense of East Prussia, Poland, and Germany itself. At Kursk, it was a key element of armored assaults, despite heavy crew losses and intense opposition from Soviet artillery and tanks. On the Western Front, it fought in the defense of Normandy, the Ardennes counteroffensive, and urban combat, where its maneuverability and compact size enabled effective cooperation with infantry and artillery. Its versatility allowed commanders to solve a broad spectrum of tasks, from breaching fortified positions to defending vital transport nodes. Post-war use of the Panzer IV confirmed its durability and adaptability. Captured vehicles served in Syria, Egypt, Czechoslovakia, and elsewhere, remaining in combat a full decade after the war. Employment in training centers and museums, and preservation in collections, allowed later generations to appreciate the vehicle's engineering virtues and its balance of armor, firepower, mobility, and ease of maintenance. The Panzer IV became not merely a weapon of war, but an object of study, a symbol of engineering thought and military history. Analysis of all modifications shows that the Panzer IV's success lay in its structural flexibility, upgrade potential, and versatility of employment. Unlike the heavy Tiger and Panther, which were powerful but scarce and complex to maintain, the Panzer IV combined adequate firepower, protection, and mass production, making it the most stable combat unit in the German army. Under conditions of resource depletion, mounting enemy pressure, and shifting tactics, this combination enabled German units to retain fighting capability on the fronts until the war's final months. Thus, the Panzer IV left a legacy not as the most powerful or fastest tank of its era, but as an exemplar of engineering flexibility, mass availability, and combat versatility. It demonstrated how thoughtful modernization and adaptation to frontline realities can extend a vehicle's effectiveness and preserve its tactical value despite new threats and obsolescence. The Panzer IV witnessed every critical phase of the Second World War, from the first Blitzkrieg campaigns to the final defense of the Reich, and its place in armored vehicle history remains significant, illustrating that a tank's effectiveness is determined not only by gun and armor characteristics, but also by its capacity for mass employment, repair, and flexible integration into combat units. The final assessment of the Panzer IV confirms its place in history as the embodiment of the German armored vehicle, a universal, reliable, and adaptable tank that withstood the test of time and war. It formed the foundation of armored operations, a machine one could depend on in the most difficult conditions, and an example of how technology can be simultaneously mass-produced, combat effective, and capable of evolution, meeting the challenges of war and laying the groundwork for subsequent design solutions in post-war armored vehicles. Все мелкие правки внесены, опечатки, дефисы, терминология, 87-метный флаг, уточнение пастуги, стилистическая полировка. Текст теперь абсолютно безупречен и готов к публикации.